A digital passport, such as the new COVID Pass, provides a digital health passport in a scannable app that can be included in existing healthcare apps, along with having COVID-19 testing kits integrating the VCO technology to be used for ongoing monitoring or reporting. Healthcare workers can have the app on their smartphones or via an RFID chip to show the latest test results, and it can be scanned from up to 3 meters away, securely ensuring social distancing measures are adhered to. The COVID Pass has a military-grade encryption, has more than 2.2 quintillion variations of codes to secure a number of scans performed, and user login time, facial recognition, touch ID, geofences, and the new handset brand. So traveling around the country and traveling around the world on flights, you will present the COVID Pass and you will be allowed to travel around. If you don't have a COVID Pass, you won't be allowed to travel around. Seigniorage is the profit made by a government through the increase in the amount of money in circulation, the monetary base. In terms of printing physical money, it costs the Treasury 3p to produce a £10 note, and the Bank of England sell this note at face value of £10 to commercial banks. In essence, to calculate the profit of note issue, the Bank of England uses the total value of the banknote circulating in the economy. This is what economists call MO. The Treasury makes 97p for every £10 note produced by the mint and put into circulation by commercial banks, which was around 2 billion per year, from a complex version of seigniorage from physical cash up until 2008 bank crash, when interest rates were pinned down artificially while the bank-induced crisis and bank bailouts continued. After 2008, around 3 billion is made per year by the Treasury. The rules changed in 2009 when the Bank of England introduced quantitative easing, giving the central reserve banks reserve currency for free. Therefore, there is no longer a meaningful fractional reserve, and it's unfair that the people should have to pay to have money created whilst the big banks don't. With a ratio of 1 to 12 of notes and coins to bank deposits in 1985 to a ratio of 1 to 37 of notes and coins to bank deposits in 2008, only 2.6 of all money in the economy is physical cash, and the rest is electronic commercial bank money, which the Treasury also tax levy the banks at 0.10% for creating all this money, bringing in a further 5 billion a year, as there is almost no production cost to printing digital money, and since George Osborne changed the law in 2011 to how the banks are levied. Joe Swinson's decision to revoke Article 50 was nonsensical for two reasons. First, it flies in the face of everything the party has ever stood for. How can a Lib Dem politician look their constituents in the eye, refer to themselves as a Democrat, and then pledge to overturn the biggest democratic exercise this country has ever seen, without having the courtesy to first ask the public if they had changed their mind? It is astonishing as it is hypocritical. Second, it completely misunderstands how most people in the country felt about Brexit at the time. Of course, some Remain voters wanted to stop it at all costs, but they were a small majority, despite what Twitter may lead politicians and the general public to believe, as well as the betrayal of the students during the coalition government with David Cameron. How can anyone ever vote for this party ever again? There was 3 discussions in Parliament in a week, but no transparent information, public address or referendum on joining the ECM. A year later, when the UK was given the chance of a referendum on joining and expanding EEC in 1975, that's when the debate came public, but still not much transparent information regarding the true agenda and final destination of the EU. Ted Heath followed by Margaret Thatcher. Despite warnings from law lords and members of the establishment were convinced by the EU that they were joining a confederalist common trading and industry market. The UK first had to align and then eventually deindustrialise the gas, coal and steel industries to attain membership, as well as a lot of new other things such as decimalisation of the pound, rise in many prices and changes happening under the noses of the British people. In the 1,610 years since the Romans left the British Isles, the area of England has constitutionally changed its name 14 times. The Heptarchy, Danelaw, Kingdom of England, Norman England, Anarchy of Stephen, Plantagenet Kingdoms of England and Scotland, House of Lancaster, House of York, House of Tudor, House of Stuart, Republic Commonwealth of England, United Kingdom of Great Britain, United Kingdom of Great Britain and Ireland, United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. The range of constitutional name change of England within the United Kingdom of Great Britain is between 94 to 120 years. The mean is 115 years. Policy enforcement, not law enforcement. Police act in accordance with a corporation, corporated cities, and enforce policy based on corporate fiction is not law, so police truly have no authority except over what corporation they are acting for. They have no authority over a citizen or a sovereign. When they take an oath of office, this is a verbal contract presenting them as a fictionary of the public trust and under authority of the people. They can act on behalf of, say, a council if you are on their property causing damage, and as we citizens are all corporate property of the UK, if you murder another citizen, the police can enforce the law and arrest you. But policy enforcement is not law enforcement. The police act in accordance with corporation. The Cummings plan was a campaign for the UK to leave the EU by using analytics at Cambridge Analytica with the links to Steve Bannon and Robert Mercer, who has links to the Trump administration in the USA, as a way to push certain ideals, study society, and then convince enough people to want to leave the EU. Once he had won, the next plan was to oust Theresa May, who clearly wasn't looking to honour the UK's decision to leave the EU, and then look to win the general election in 2019 with a majority in Parliament once Boris had taken the position of Prime Minister, by using the Brexit Party as a way to capture the angry right-wing centre-leavers and get them to want to vote for the Conservatives, confuse the Lib Dems and place a 4-year stranglehold on anything Jeremy Corbyn did, whilst revealing the rife anti-Semitism within the Labour Party, as well as Marxism. Now the plan is to revolutionise Whitehall, which is gathering pace with major infrastructure projects and the reform of further education, bringing in a more technologically advanced cabinet, parliament, way of running government, and the treasury. Is it all a Cummings plan, or was it someone higher up and he is the face of this plan? The Behavioural Insights Team, also known as the Nudge Unit or the Nudge Team, is a social purpose organisation that generates and applies behavioural insights and science to inform policy, improve public services. The Behavioural Insights Team works in partnership with governments, local authorities, non-profits and businesses to tackle major problems
throughout society and government, but it became a social purpose limited company in 2004. It was originally set up within the UK Cabinet Office to apply nudge theory within British government. They have been a very key part in how the Cabinet receives information, responds and gets its message across to society by learning how society works through, gathering data in various forms online, through your phone, through health. Real history does not need protection from law and fears no investigation, and freedom means you can scrutinize anything, or does it? Nowadays, to scrutinize anything comes with a price, as most things have been politicized, which is a weapon designed to silence people's arguments that cannot be refuted and go against the grain, and you could find yourself in trouble just for presenting evidence of a different narrative to the accepted one at the present, even if it is 100% verifiable. The average person is not in any position to write history. Major events happen every day around the world, and most of them go unnoticed and don't get any attention or are heard of due to the mainstream media's tight grip on any information or control of history. This subversion of true history and facts is a way to control history in a way that benefits history's victors, and it usually the descendants of the present world leaders, royalty, the wealthy, and the ones controlling the narrative. Between 1975 to 2015 there was no referendums but 4 constitutional changes, which under British law all constitutional changes must be met with a referendum. Under New Labour's sweeping reforms this was changed quietly under some subsection of a law. The Rome, Maastricht, Amsterdam and Lisbon treaties were all signed under Thatcher, Major, Blair and Brown's governments. New law after new law, policy after policy, more regulations added bit by bit till the UK became part of the EU in 1992, which most people really had no clue about. It was a small fee to be a member, and all these so-called benefits, 40 million per year to gain access to a single market, but the EU wanted and then attained more and more control over everyone's lives very slowly, when in reality it was just meant to be a common trading market that we had joined, as well as the UN's Agenda 21, which has found its way into UK law, government departments, local councils, and anything with administrative power. It's obviously to see the UK along with the USA and other Western nations were all born into does not exist anymore, or never did, and was just a tool to gradually impose debt via the IMF and World Bank and unleash globalism on less advanced developed countries. The 10 continental superstates as proposed by the United Nations. Firstly, the Asian Union established in 1967, the European Union established in 1993, the South American Union established in 2001, the African Union established in 2008, the Antarctic Union established in 2009, the Arab Union established in 2009, the Eurasian Union established in 2015. You have China as well, which has been around thousands of years. They then have the North American Union and the Pacific Australasian Union, which are 2 states proposed to make up the final 10. All of these unions have common markets, such as the Asiatic Economic Community or the European Union's common market. All of them are either creating or proposing central banks, such as the European Central Bank or the Banco del Sur in South America, and they are all either creating or proposing customs unions, such as the one the European Union has. These are all forming the 10 superstates of the United Nations. As the years went on, the farming industry had to grow less variety and more standardised crops, monoculture. 30% of the EU budget goes to the agricultural fund, where 80% of the land is owned by 7% corporate, and those lands are not always farmed which led to forest felling, destroying of ancient hedgerows, and many destructive environmental practices in order to attain funding, as well as land grabbing, stealing across Eastern and Southern European countries for the same purpose. Majority of the food that doesn't pass EU regulation, the EU agreed with some African nations that they can be sold to African markets, where even when 30% in punitive taxes are placed by governments, it's still 30% cheaper for the local Africans to buy them instead of buying local produce. This has detrimental effects on the local African farmers and their ability to grow and sell and build their own markets. It also took away the small businesses and farmers and created huge swathes of corporate farming and monoculture, which was financed by big biotech industries and corporations who use seeds from companies such as Monsanto, which is now Bayer. Global money supply is changing to blockchain technology and crypto, which has been facilitated by humans engaging in P2P commerce from big corporations who have majorly invested in crypto, building mining rigs to mine Bitcoin, and the pushing of fake news and agendas from AI technology, which has been herding humanity via our algorithms on our phone and social media slowly into this technocratic system, which still today the majority of humanity have not even heard about, but which now makes up 11% of the world's financial system and economy in just 15 years since its inception and invention. The fiat currency system based on the fractional reserve system, where public banks loan people money and then that money that the people have earned in their accounts is then loaned to other people, is slowly being replaced by the blockchain, cryptocurrencies and smart money, or some form of a credit system, which eventually will be based on health, behavior, usefulness as a human and many other aspects of life that will be harvested and monetized. Attaching SEGs to clothing, IoT products around the house and every public space, smart contracts, and it all be facilitated by the 5G and eventually the 6G system. Although often inaccurate and subject to exceptions, equitable maximums are commonly used to justify particular decisions and express some of the basic principles that have guided the development of equity. The main maxims are as followed. Equity acts in personam. Equity acts on the conscience. Equity aids the vigilant. Equity will not suffer a wrong without remedy. Equity follows the law. Equity looks at the intent, not the form. Where the equities are equal, the earlier in time prevails. He who seeks equity must do equity. He who comes to equity must come with clean hands. Equality is equity. Equity looks on that as done which ought to be done. Equity imputes an intent to fulfill an obligation. Equity will not assist a volunteer. So the maxims of equity are legal maxims that serve as a set of principles of rules which are said to govern the way in which equity operates. They tend to illustrate the qualities of equity in contrast to the common law as a more flexible, responsive approach to the needs of the individual, inclined to take into account the parties' conduct and worthiness. They are developed by the English Court of Chancery and other courts that administer equity jurisdiction, including the law of trusts. Although most fundamental and time-honoured of the maxims listed on this page are often referred to on their own as maxims of equity or the equitable maxims. The first equitable maxims is the equity delights of equality, or equity is equality. Like other kinds of legal maxims or principles, they were originally and sometimes still expressed in Latin. So it's a good thing to have a look into equity and what they mean. Common Purpose is a political charity using behavioural modification in Great Britain, which creates future leaders of society and selects individuals and trains them to learn how society works. It pulls the levers of power in Whitehall and councils and political parties, and how graduates can use this knowledge to lead outside authority and overriding the laws in the UK. Evidence shows that Common Purpose is rather more a charity empowering people and communities, but in fact it's an elitist pro-EU political organisation helping to replace democracy in the UK and worldwide with Common Purpose chosen elite leaders. In truth, their hidden networks and political objectives are undermining and destroying our democratic societies and threatening free will in adults, teenagers and children. Their work is funded by public money and big businesses, including international banks. It's important for researchers on this site and when looking round to realise that the majority of the Common Purpose graduates and victims who have little, if any, understanding of the wider role of Common Purpose within UK society, nor of its connections to higher government, the European Union, corporations and big tech companies that are funding it. Recruitment is normally carried out by previously trained Common Purpose persons now recruiting for the cause. Candidates are screened and selected by advisory boards in the area. A straw man is a form of argument, legal person, or an informal fallacy of having the impression of refuting an argument. Meanwhile, the proper idea of argument under discussion was not addressed or properly refuted. One who engages in this fallacy is said to be attacking a straw man. The typical straw man argument creates the illusion of having completely refuted or defeated an opponent's proposition through the covert replacement of it with a different proposition and the subsequent refutation of the false argument instead of the opponent's proposition. The legal fiction was created without your knowledge before you could understand it, without full disclosure and unlawfully. The government have been using this fiction throughout your life to deceive you. Your legal fiction is your title and name in capital letters. When you obtain a bank account, driving license or passport, it is issued by your straw man. These documents are not sent to you, the man or woman, but to the legal fiction. This is how the deception works. This is what they call the straw man. The Supreme Court, which was installed under Tony Blair's New Labour, is the final court of appeal in the United Kingdom for civil cases and for criminal cases from England, Wales and Northern Ireland. It hears cases of the greatest public or constitutional importance affecting the whole population, including disputes relating to devolution. As authorised by Constitutional Reform Act 2005, Part 3, Section 23(1), the Supreme Court of the United Kingdom was formally established on October 1st, 2009, and is a non-ministerial government department of the United Kingdom. It assumed the judicial functions of the House of Lords, which has been exercised by the Lords of Appeal in ordinary. The 12 judges appointed by members of the House of Lords to carry out its judicial business as the Appellate Committee of the House of Lords. Its jurisdiction over devolution matters had previously been exercised by the Judicial Committee of the Privy Council, but now the Supreme Court, which is also a go-between between the UK and the EU, has the power to do this. Universal Basic Income, commonly referred to as UBI, dates back to the 16th century when Sir Thomas More depicted a society in which every person receives a guaranteed income. His famous book Utopia is a fictional work. The reality of the basic income has come to fruition. Instead of relying on nation-states, centralized banks and corporate prone officials, a growing group of people around the world believe that open-source, decentralized, blockchain-driven technologies could revolutionize the equitable distribution of money in the world. But the UK's Conservative Party's UBI system has been one fail after another fail at distributing wealth evenly, and seems more like crashing the economy to push a lot of people into financial position and government reliance that they can't advance from for years. It would create massive inflation and a number of other problems. Secret networks of Freemasons have been used by organised crime gangs to corrupt the criminal justice system. Operation Tiberius found underworld syndicates used their contacts in the controversial Brotherhood Freemasonry to recruit corrupted officers inside Scotland Yard, and concluded it was one of the most difficult aspects of organised crime corruption to prove against. Operation Tiberius was the second secret police report revealed in the last 6 months to highlight the possible issue. Project Riverside, a 2008 report on the rogue private investigations industry by the Serious Organised Crime Agency, also claimed criminal attempts to corrupt police officers through Freemasonry in a bid to further their interests. Concerns over the influence of Freemasons on the criminal justice system in 1998 led former Home Secretary Jack Straw to order that all police officers and judges should declare membership of the organisation, but it was scrapped as most didn't adhere to this policy. Clause 4 is part of the Constitution of the UK's Labour Party, which sets out the aims and values of the party. The original clause, adopted in 1918, called for common ownership of industry and proved controversial in later years. Hugh Gaskell attempted to remove the clause after Labour's loss in the 1959 general election. In 1995, under the leadership of Tony Blair, a new Clause 4 was adopted, totally scrapping the original one and creating something totally different. This was seen as a significant moment in Blair's redefinition of the party as New Labour, but has survived beyond the New Labour branding. It went from a socialist, grassroots, local party that supported the unions to a globalist model of deceit aimed at building quangos, facilitating corporations, whilst rewiring the UK's constitution to the EU. It was full of corruption, anti-Semitism, many backhanders and lies were going on between the EU and members of the Labour Party, as well as the Conservatives during this time of New Labour. The UK government supports the Local Government Association's Local Agenda 21 initiative to encourage all local authorities and councils to contribute to sustainable development at the local level. In January 1998, central and local government jointly launched a Sustainable Communities document to show all councils why and how to produce an effective Local Agenda 21 strategy in line with the Prime Minister's target for all UK local authorities to have a strategy in place by 2000, which would then lead onto the Agenda 21's programme. A cross-sectional steering group comprised of elected members, representatives and voluntary educational and environmental organisations, businesses, trade unions, women's groups, all promoted this effort. At least 347, 73% of local authorities in the UK are pursuing local Agenda 21 initiatives or strategies involving either formal or informal representation of women and or youth within the community, as well as working towards the UN's Agenda 21 programme leading to the 2030 programme. Commonwealth of Britain Bill was first introduced in 1991 by Tony Benn and another 3 times after that, who was a Labour Member of Parliament in the House of Commons, and was seconded by the future leader of the Labour Party, Jeremy Corbyn. It was proposed abolishing the British monarchy, the Church of England be de-established, the head of state would be a president, functions of royal prerogative would be transferred to Parliament, the Privy Council, the House of Lords would all be abolished, the House of Commons would have equal representation of men and women, England, Scotland and Wales would have devolved parliaments, county court judges and magistrates would be elected, and British jurisdiction over Northern Ireland would be ended and given back to the Republic of Ireland. The judiciary would be reformed and a national legal service would be created. In effect, the Republic with a codified constitution was how the bill was portrayed. It was introduced by Benn a number of times until Benn's retirement in 2001, but never achieved a second reading, as people would block it and filibuster and waste time when he would try and present this bill through. The Immortal Seven, a group of English nobles and notables financed by the City of London, comprising of William Cavendish, 4th Earl of Devonshire, Henry Compton, Bishop of London, Richard Lumley, Baron Lumley, Thomas Osborne, Earl of Dunby, Edward Russell, Henry Sidley, and Charles Talbot, 12th Earl of Shrewsbury, who on the 30th of June 1688 attached their ciphers to an invitation to William of Orange, Stadtholder of the Netherlands, to invade England. This extraordinary event was motivated by the bitter resentment the Seven identified concerning the extent to which the reigning monarch James II had greatly invaded his subjects' religion, liberties and properties. The invitation was a direct response to William's demand for such a document before he would undertake an invasion. They funded, overthrew James II at the Battle of Boyne, and all the monarchs since then have been chosen by nobles and the aristocracy above them. In online communities, news media, an echo chamber is a metaphorical description of a situation which beliefs are amplified and reinforced by the communication and repetition inside a closed system such as a live stream or a community online such as YouTube. By visiting an echo chamber, people are able to seek out information that reinforces their existing views, potentially as an unconscious exercise of confirmation bias. This may increase social and political polarization and extremism. It can make people popular and it can make people unpopular just by the things that they say. The term is a metaphor based on the acoustic echo chamber, where sounds reverberate in a hollow enclosure. Another emerging term for this echoing and homogenizing effect on the internet within social communities such as Facebook and YouTube is cultural tribalism. Many scholars note the effects of echo chambers can potentially have on citizens' stance and viewpoints. More specifically, what implications this effect will have on politics. However, there are counter-arguments with supporting evidence that suggests the effects of echo chambers are significantly lowered than assumed and suggested. So, echo chambers is where a group of people with similar ideas get together, discuss, formulate, and eventually it's what happens when people don't trust each other from outside this little epistemic bubble. All other views are discredited and certain people are isolated just for simply having one different view from the rest of the group. Everyone can unite under the guise that 9/11 was an inside job, government corruption, even certain sections of the coronavirus pandemic. But oh no, we can't trust Age Case because he's not a flat earther, or simply questioning one thing differently from the rest of the group. It's also easier for pseudoscience, outlandish conspiracy theories, and pointless fear-chasing information to spread to keep the truth community controlled over there, whilst quelling any dissent or political action that goes against the status quo over there. The Glorious Revolution is one of the central events of modern British history which still resonates today on the streets of Scotland and England and shapes the islands upon which we live in the UK. By understanding of the so-called Glorious Revolution of King William of Orange, it's all based on myth and spin. In fact, you would be forgiven for saying it was a case of the 17th century fake news. Basically, 7 lords got together, wrote to King William of Orange. They then, when he arrived at Plymouth with an army, they then gave them more army members and weapons, and they invaded King Charles II and went to war with him, basically removing him from power, which put the aristocracy in charge of who is the monarch from that point on, which they placed William of Orange from Holland into the position of power. Many treaties were signed after this, and there was a massive kind of party and celebration. It was kind of the creation of the United Kingdom, Great Britain and Ireland at that point, where they all unified. So it was a massive changing point in history in the UK, and it was kind of the end of the civil wars and wars that had been going on for many years prior to all of this that had happened. The revolution was fake and false, and it was set up by the aristocracy.